Hi, Sarah. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
No.
Okay. So,
Hi, Joy. We can hear you, but can't see you.
Okay,
Hmm.
let me see what I can do about that.
No, Billy, you're good.
Billy, you're good.
Okay, do I look
You're
okay?
good. Yeah.
Yep, you look great.
Hey, Gary.
Hi.
I think my camera's on.
It just has your name up there, Joy, but we can hear you okay.
Can you turn her camera on? You can't.
I don't think so. Let me try. Yeah. I can take away her permission to speak. That seems wrong.
So you get some good news, Andy?
Have I?
You have any good news?
Oh, sorry, I thought you knew something I
We need
didn't.
good news. Tonight, we got some good news.
Let me think. It'll take a while.
I met with, last week, there's some TMT board members, Henry Yang, Mike Bolte, and then Feng Shuan joined them. They were taking this UC Regent, on a tour, of Maunakea. Apparently, she's been one of the UC Regents who have been a real supporter of UC staying in the deal. So anyway, I met with them up at HP, and Mike was telling me, well, Greg, when you report on at our board meetings, it seems like, you're being very, very cautious with your words. And I say, well, Mike, every board meeting, every TMT board meeting, Bob wants to meet with us ahead of time, with Doug and I. And the first thing he always says is, what's the good news? We need some good news for this board.
I know, I did the first real KOE tour on Saturday.
Oh, yeah?
That was good.
Oh, good,
Good group of people.
good. Did they visit you folks?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was good. Next one is SMA, I think.
Okay.
Seems to work. So,
How many people?
15 in the end. We had 13 and then a couple turned up who had trouble with the back end and thought they'd registered. So we found we had a guy whose name I forgot now doing filming for Christine, and he put them up in his vehicle.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Was it Nalehu?
No,
Filming?
God, we were just talking about it earlier. I've forgotten. It'll come back to me.
Dinah's there.
Mhm.
You sound on or off?
Her sound is off. She has muted.
Hi,
There.
it's on now.
Now it's on.
Hey, Diana.
Hi. It's
You
raining.
guys surviving the VOG? You guys surviving the VOG?
No, we don't have fog now. We've got freezing rain. It was
Really?
41 degrees when I got up Friday morning.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So always something exciting going on up here.
Howdy, everybody.
Hi, Wayne.
I thought it was going to be late. I heard there's a special broadcast of some kind of address on the Comedy Channel for the next couple of hours.
At least you have a sense of humor about it.
I was just gonna say, it depends on what you consider humorous, but
Yeah. Really, yeah.
yeah.
How bad is it for the university?
Still to be determined. We don't know the full impact yet.
Incremental disappointment. Every
Yeah.
week is something new.
And we're also getting the message now that the feds are wising up to organizations that are renaming programs for the sake of renaming to get out of the firing line. And so we're gonna need to be a little bit more diligent.
Wayne, what's going to happen with all the Hawaiian Studies programs? Are they going to consider those DEI?
Don't know yet. Don't know yet.
I was talking to the rector the other day, and she is very concerned. But so far, no one's challenged the programs, so we'll see.
And I was wondering about the immersion schools. They've been so successful in bringing back the language.
Yeah,
Well,
I think they have they face potential exposure. That's without a doubt. The question is whether or not it's going to rise to the level of where the feds will take exception to it.
well,
This has affected some of our planning as well. Yeah.
Supposed to.
We plan to have a Hawaiian cultural advisor
Mhm.
part-time. And they're looking at that very hardly, trying to figure out.
Who's that?
We
Yes.
have a plan to have a Hawaiian cultural advisor. And that's now being scrutinized quite hard by our lawyers to see.
What you might want to think about, Andy, as an alternative is contract out with the College of Hawaiian language right here. Well, Ally does that with their workforce. Standing contract between them and UH provide, I guess, a continuing education.
Yeah. Okay.
This is Joy here. Sorry to interrupt. I checked the video settings. Everything seems to be fine, but I think I'd have to reboot my laptop. And at this point, I think I'll deal with just my name showing. But sorry.
That's okay, Joy. Thank you, though. Let's see, we have Diana, Billy, Roberta, myself, and Andy.
Mhm.
So Roberta, hi.
So we can start.
Yeah, we have quorum.
Okay. Hold on. All right. It is now 5:01, and I will call the meeting to order. Let's see. For the record, all of those or all of us who are attending the meeting via Zoom, please raise your hand if there is anyone else in attendance with you. Seeing none, for the record, each person attending via Zoom is by themselves. Next item, there is no public or written testimony submitted for tonight's meeting. So I will now move on to minutes of the last meeting. Are there any corrections or changes to what was circulated?
I move we accept the minutes of the Maunakea Management Board meeting from February 4th.
Is there a second?
Second,
Was that, Billy, was that you?
that was me doing the second.
Great. So I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
bye.
Unanimously passed. Next item. Kahukumana report.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chair. Not much to report on Kahukumana. They have their next meeting this Thursday. We did meet on February 6th, where we met and reviewed, just like we did with Maunakea Management Board, the Maunakea related legislation that had been introduced this session. I'll cover the status of all of that legislation in my later on in my ED report. But suffice it to say here that Kahukumana was very interested and engaged in wanting to understand the purposes and objectives of MKSOA's legislative proposals. We had a good discussion about it, especially concerning jurisdiction over conservation lands, which they are very, very concerned about. Their next meeting is not scheduled until this Thursday, as I mentioned. And in preparing that agenda, Chair Nelson has requested a follow-up on the discussion I shared with them and that I shared with you folks, and that we'll talk about it a little bit later, on the impact on CMS funding from the executive orders coming out of Washington. So I'll get into more detail on that later on in my report. But Shane has indicated interest specifically to cover that on Thursday's agenda. We also reviewed the Visitor Information Station Warehouse Power Restoration Project with them. Again, that's something we'll be covering next on our agenda. KKM had no objections and substantive comments to that project. We also reviewed the project with the Environment Committee, who also had no objections to it. And we'll actually be presenting this power restoration project to the MKSOA board next week for informational purposes at their March 13th meeting. So it's been a pretty light schedule or light agenda with Kahukumana this month. Again, nothing substantive that we've taken up, still working on a number of things, outstanding things that we had started with them last year. Let me just stop there and see if there's any questions about Kahukumana.
No.
Okay. Then if it's okay, Chair, can we move into the Executive Director's report?
Yes, please do.
And what I would like to do, if it's okay, I'd like to take up the CMS Visitor Information Station Warehouse Power Project first, since it is only for information, and that way we can let Rodrigo and Joy leave after they're done. Then I have a variety of other things I want to report on in the remainder of my report. So while Rodrigo is getting ready, is he going to share? You're going to share screen, Rodrigo?
Yes.
Okay. While you're getting ready to do that, let me just once again point out that this project is being presented for informational purposes only. There's no action required of this board. The approvals necessary to proceed, we believe, are just a concurrence letter from Office of Conservation and Coastal Lands. So there's no formal approval or recommendation needed from this body. However, if you have any comments or things you'd like us to consider as the project moves forward, please feel free to offer those when we discuss it. And of course, we'll answer any questions you have about the project as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Rodrigo.
All right. Thank you, Greg. Aloha ko. As Greg mentioned, this is a presentation for information purposes only. And what we're trying to do is restore power to the building that's currently being used as the visitor station warehouse. If you look at the picture of the left, that's an aerial view of the Viz and the two long double trailer buildings that were down there. The two longhouses received power from a Helco transformer that's located across the Summit Access Road underground to the first cabin and then the second cabin. The cabins down below get power from this other transformer inside a yellow circle underground to this pool box over here and then to the cabins. When the new ingress egress project was built, that power line that went from across the road to the two long buildings was removed, and power to the remaining building was left out. Of the two buildings, just one was left, as you can see in the picture to the right, but there is no power to it, which makes it, needless to say, very impractical for the VIS staff workers to work there. When I first joined the VIS, the VIS staff members were literally working in that building with headlamps on their head, like they were like camping. Later on, we put on some ceiling lights. They're currently being powered by a basically a camping battery pack, and we put a portable solar unit outside to charge it during the day. But that doesn't give us enough power to do other upgrades we want to the building, which would include adding security cameras for security purposes. The whole inventory of the warehouse is stored there. To add internet and to the warehouse so they can improve their inventory management system and be more efficient at the VIS. If you look at the what we're proposing of doing is that number 3, that the yellow circle is a electrical box that has service from Helco, and there are underground cables that go from 3 to 4. There's a pool box over there. Those are the cables that then go on to the cabins down below. There are excess conduits already in place, and they already have pull strings. So it'll be fairly easy to pull wire from that electrical panel down to the pool box. And then we would have to do about 75 feet of trenching. That's the red dotted line to go from the pool box over to the warehouse. And again, that picture on the left, that shows the electrical panel where the Helco lines come in. The lines go under the paved parking lot. Those are existing lines, so we don't have to trench under the paved lot. There are spare lines with pull wires in it. That circle B is where the pool box is, where we would be pulling the cables through. And then line D indicates the trenching that we'd have to do. Now, we got to remember also that since these cabins had power in the past already, they're already wired to code. So they have all the wiring inside, all the light fixtures, all the breakers. There's fuse boxes or breaker boxes in there, switches. So everything is ready just for power to be reconnecting. As far as the justification goes, as I mentioned, the building is used to store all of the VIS inventory. Without any power, we don't have any security systems for the building. Right now, lights are currently powered by a battery pack. We don't have internet or Wi-Fi because we need continuous power, and we would need that to upgrade our inventory management software. We're estimating the project to have a total cost of about $5,000, including labors and part. We would be working with an electrician to do the wiring connection, and our utilities team would be doing the trenching. As far as plants goes, there's a couple of self-planted mamana trees that are right next to the access doors to the electrical panels that will have to be removed. There's 3 of them. 2 of them are small enough where we believe they can be dug out and transplanted to a different location. And 1 is a bit larger, the one you can see on the far right pictures on the circle labeled C. That one is not directly in front of the box, but it can grow to block access to the box, which it can be a safety issue. So that one just needs to be pruned back. I think it's too big for it to be dug out and removed, but it can definitely be pruned back to keep access to that electrical panel open. And it's that's it. It's pretty straightforward, small project that I think will add a lot of value to the warehouse, to the Viz, especially considering that we have, you know, all of our inventory there.
So once again, the warehouse is used to store the inventory for the visitor information station. Not really a viable workstation or workplace because of the lack of power. Although, as Rodrigo said, we've been making do with solar and battery packs. The original permit, when those two longhouses were constructed, is what installation of the power lines was permitted under. And since the ingress egress project also occurred in that same area, we actually removed one of the longhouses. That whole area is previously disturbed. So we believe with OCCL, Office of Conservation Coastal Lands, we will be able to get just a concurrence approval that we can proceed with this project without actually having to get in an administrative or board approved permit. That won't be required. That's why we're presenting it just for information purposes only. If for some reason it comes back from OCCL where we're going to be required to do something more, we will definitely bring it forward to our advisory groups again. Are there any issues you'd like us to consider or questions that we can answer?
Yeah, I have a question, and it might be really basic, but when the warehouses were built, you said it has all the electrical. Did it ever have power to turn on the lights and,
Yeah.
you know, what used with power?
Yeah, those longhouses were used for various purposes. At one time, they were used for public lectures even. Is where our visitor information, some of our visitor information station programs were being run.
And then it was shut off just because they were used, is that why?
Yeah, it was never clear to me at least, why they decided to pull the power out. You know, Rodrigo or Joy?
Nope, I have no idea. That's same question I have.
Yeah.
And just for this group's information also, I mean, I did look at the option of going off grid and installing solar power for the house, but there's a couple of problems that make it not viable. For starters, the load on the house is so small that any small solar system, as small as it is going to be far more expensive than the electrical connection to the line. And on top of that, the roof is not structurally sound as it is to withstand solar panels. So we would have to beef up the structural integrity of the trusses inside the house. So it just becomes a much larger, much more complex project to try to go solar than to connect into the current electrical line.
Okay, I have no questions, but I think it makes a lot of sense so that it's usable.
Any other questions or comments or things you'd like us to consider? Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you,
Once
everybody.
again, if you,
Thank you, Rodrigo.
Aloha.
for some reason it comes back from OCCL, we'll bring it back to you folks. Okay, I'll just continue with my ED report.
Yes.
Roberta, okay.
Thank
Excuse me. Okay, first item, well, I want to update a few things on the MK transition, and then also a quick update on the federal funding issue that I briefed you folks on last time. So in terms of MK-SOA transition, the first item is I wanted to update you folks on the status of the proposed legislation that the authority had introduced this session. So House Bill 143 and Senate Bill 769 were the companion bills introduced that sought to clarify the authority's jurisdiction over conservation district use permitting. Those are the bills that also sought to prevent the transfer of UH's existing conservation district use permits to the authority. And with UH, meaning UH would retain oversight of the observatory related CUPs. Those bills also propose to bifurcate the permitting authority between, or the permitting jurisdiction between MK-SOA and DLNR when it comes to the Maunakea lands that UH currently manages, which I reported DLNR had expressed concerns over. Long story short is that neither bill was scheduled for a hearing in either the House or the Senate, nor were they referred prior to the deadlines to be referred to the joint committees that they had been originally assigned to. So as of now, both measures are deferred for this session. And we don't anticipate anything else happening with them. On House Bill 144 and Senate Bill 770, this is the legislation that the authority had proposed seeking a temporary exemption from the Sunshine Law for their work during the transition period. At our last meeting, I had mentioned that we had anticipated that bill was going to be scheduled for a hearing. House Bill 144 was heard, hearing was held before the House Water and Land Committee on February 6th. The measure received strong opposition from a variety of groups. Committee members themselves really seem to focus on why the need for private conversations between MK-SOA board members during this transition period, especially when one of the main reasons for creating MK-SOA was the perceived need for broader community engagement and transparency on matters concerning Mauna Kea. Some of the committee members and some of the testimony actually also waded into the need or possibility for extending the transition period if MK-SOA needed more time to prepare their plans and their rules that they're required to have in place for them to assume responsibility, which would have had its own set of issues. However, at the end of the hearing, the committee did not decide. They decided to come back later on for decision making the following week. But at the end of the hearing, it was reported by MK-SOA that their leadership went and met with the Water and Land Committee leadership, where they requested that their bill be pulled and deferred. So there will be no further consideration of this measure this session. Senate Bill 6, which was introduced by Senator Inouye last year and reintroduced this year, that would have kept Conservation District Authority with DLNR, as well as clarify exactly what MK-SOA's regulatory scope would be. No hearing was scheduled prior to the required deadlines for referral. So that legislation is also deferred. And then finally, Senate Bill 197, which was introduced by Senator Favela last year, and I think the year before as well, proposing that all land use decisions concerning Maunakea be subject to public referendum. Again, that no hearing was scheduled for that bill. So the legislation is also deferred for this session. So essentially, none of the Maunakea related bills made it to referral or crossover. The one bill on the sunshine waiver exemption did receive a hearing, but there was strong opposition expressed by several groups to that granting that exemption. I do have a couple more things to talk about relative to MKSOA transition, but let me stop there and see if there are any questions on the legislative update.
No.
Okay.
Oh,
All right.
I have a question, Rick. So, don't members there's a certain number of members that need to be approved because they're on that rotating schedule? Has
Oh, yeah.
been set up
Right,
for
I
that?
did it. Yeah, there are four board members up for reconfirmation this year. I believe it's Chair Komeiji, Noinoi Wong Wilson, Paul Horner, and Rich Matsuda. We've been tracking when those confirmation hearings are going to be scheduled, and to date, they have not been scheduled. I know Senator Inouye, who chairs the Water and Land Committee committee in the Senate, that's the committee that would hear these nominations or reconfirmations. She's not scheduled those confirmation hearings yet. I mean, I saw some other ones that she has scheduled for other DLNR related boards and commissions, but not for MKSOA. Thank you for that reminder, Roberto. Any other questions? Okay.
Well, sorry, Greg. So if they don't get confirmed, what happens?
What happens, Gary? They continue to serve until someone else is nominated? I think we lost Gary.
Diana is trying to speak. I have to promote her real quick.
Oh.
So she must have some information.
I don't know, maybe our regents would know. You know what happens?
No, I don't. I think we'd have to refer back to the MKSOA board.
Yeah.
Bylaws rather.
Yeah,
I'm not familiar with bylaws enough to know.
okay. So don't know yet, the answer to that question. We'll find out.
Thank you.
Oh, Jesse's here.
Jesse and Diane are both here.
Yeah.
Oh,
Two Dianas are here. I'm not sure I understand what
Yeah,
happened.
could you repeat the question? I got the tail part of it.
Sorry.
the question is, there are four MKSOA board members who are up for reconfirmation this year. Those hearings have not been scheduled. Question is, what happens if they don't get reconfirmed?
Yeah, I need to look into that. It's always more complicated than it should be, but you know, there may be holdovers, but let me look into that. I'll get back to you, Greg.
Okay. Thanks.
No other questions from me.
Okay. The next item on, as far as transfer, the work that we're doing on the transfer, update on the long-term asset transfer working group. Once again, this is the working group that's has been formed to look at the transfer of assets and liabilities from UH to MKSOA. Our last meeting of the working group was held on February 21st. We were asked, CMS management was asked to provide at that meeting an overview of CMS finances to the working group. The purpose was to demonstrate or to illustrate how UH and observatory funding that we receive for our operations flows into the Center for CMS and MKSS, and how the funds are used to implement and fulfill our responsibilities under our master plan, under our comprehensive management plan, under our rules, our leases, our operating agreements with the observatories, and our permits. Once again, the master plan, management plan, rules, leases, permits, operating agreements are all considered assets, quote unquote, that would be transferred. Interestingly, there were very few questions that we received after we did the presentation. In my view, in part due to the complexity of our operation and what is required to account for the implementation of our management. You know, we get monies from multiple sources, so each of those sources requires their own accounting. And those monies are used for certain things. Each pot of money is used for certain things. So it gets rather complicated for Nahua and her team. But I think that probably was one of the reasons for us not getting very many questions. We have been requested, and we will be making the same presentation to the authority board at their March 13th board meeting as well. And that's something, Chair, if this group would ever interested in seeing, we're more than willing to provide that presentation to this group as well. It takes about 15 minutes, but I just put that all out there because I don't think we've ever done that for you folks before. So to date, the working group has reviewed the UH state leases, or subleases, the right of entry for the road, the operating agreements with the observatories, and the permits, or at least the conservation district use permits, not all the permits. At our last meeting on the 21st, subsequent to that last meeting, I've now been asked to recommend on what the next tier of our review should cover. Now that we've completed what are probably the most complicated aspects of the inventory that we put together. So I'm working on that recommendation for Chair Kudo now. So that's the status of the long-term asset transfer working group. I know Mike has sat in on some of the meetings, as have Jesse and Nahua. Any questions for us?
Actually, I'm not sure if any other members are interested, but I would be interested, Greg, in your 15-minute presentation. I think that would be very helpful to understand what the MK SOA board is hearing.
Sure, we can do that. We'll put that on the agenda for our next meeting. Any other questions on that? Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I want to move on to the next item. Again, critical to the MK-SOA transition process. This has to do with establishment of a framework for the future of astronomy in Mauna Kea and future decommissionings. So last July, at an observatory directors meeting, MK-SOA chair John Komeiji and newly hired executive director John DeFries were invited to attend that meeting. At that meeting, Chair Komeiji requested from the directors, the observatory directors, a proposal on what a framework for the future of astronomy on Mauna Kea should include. So as you recall, Act 255 directs the authority to establish a framework for astronomy-related development on Mauna Kea. That framework is supposed to include limitations on the number of observatories and limitations on astronomy-related facilities. It also is supposed to address astronomy facility footprint limitations. And obviously, all of this is central to or foundational to the overarching mandate the authority has, which is to establish or implement astronomy as a state policy on Mauna Kea. So depending on what the authority were to decide about an astronomy framework, that framework would be central to determine decommissioning requirements going forward. So this is obviously an important issue for the observatories and the university. And deliberations on this, what the directors felt good about recommending to MKSOA have been slow, partly because of a lot of other issues, but partly because there's many sensitive issues involved in coming up with a recommendation. Essentially, a recommendation would mean the directors would be choosing the future of facilities up there at one level. So on February 21st, because of the lack of progress that had been made on this issue, developing this recommendation, the observatory directors had a directors meeting, and with Doug Simons and myself as offering this, we discussed the option of having the directors recommend to the authority that the authority adopt UH's 2022 master plan and 2022 comprehensive management plan update. That would be the recommendation the observatory directors would make. As you recall, the UH master plan limits astronomy development to no more than 9 observatories in the future, with or without TMT. It also laid out how decommissioning sites could be reused in the future, and what the process UH was intending to use to come up with the 9, if you will. Comprehensive management plan itself also outlines the process for decommissioning. Part of the reason we are suggesting to the directors that they make that their recommendation is because, as we all know, the timeline is ticking. Adoption of our UH plans would greatly facilitate the authority being able to assume operations by 2028, while they still could deliberate changes to other aspects of our plans that they want to consider. It would also enable discussions with the observatories about future leases to begin sooner, like now, which itself, I estimate, Andy, I don't know how you think about it, but I estimate it would take 2 to 3 years to finalize, just because of the need for the authority themselves to have to adopt rules for leasing lands, and that's something else that the Act 255 requires them to do. But the observatories themselves have their own timelines with their owners and funders that they need to work through their respective governance systems to get their necessary approvals. And central to deciding whether somebody would want to stay or not is knowing how much they're going to have to pay. And you can't really get to that point without getting into conversations about leases pretty quickly. So that's the recommendation that CMS and IFA have made to the observatories about what they consider proposing to the authority as they were asked to do. Last week, my team and IFA discussed this discussion that we had with the directors and discussed this option with MKSOA's management team at our joint management committee meeting on the 25th. As we understand it, the MKSOA board is scheduled for a second retreat later this month in March.
Sunday the 23rd.
23rd, okay. Where we were informed by Executive Director DeFries that issues germane to the future of astronomy are supposed to be discussed. It's not clear exactly what that is, but that's how it was described to us. So we will continue, the Joint Management Committee will continue this discussion of this topic at our next meeting, which is on the 25th, where we hope to learn how this option was received by the authority board. So I know that's a long-winded description and a lot of words to say that we've put something as a recommendation on the table that is still being considered. But we feel like we need to encourage the process along because the timeline is ticking and it's going to get very difficult to meet the 2028 timeline if we don't start taking up some of these difficult issues sooner than later. Now, I do want to provide a brief update on federal funding, but let me stop here and just see if there's any questions.
No.
Okay. All right.
Just a question.
Sure.
How did you think that was received at the directors' meeting?
I thought that it made sense, but I didn't think collectively the directors felt they could actually vote or make that recommendation at this point. Yeah, but I do think that they felt it made sense because they haven't been able to come up with anything else. You know, the master plan and the limit of 9 was vetted during our whole process for developing the master plan. Issues on, why 9 and, how do we get to 9 or how do we get to 9 were discussed. So we feel like there's a rationale behind it that they could point to, that we can point to. But it's obviously something that I think the directors have to socialize with their boards and get comfortable with as well.
If they arrive at a decision, that would be advantageous.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They stopped the RFP process, right?
I believe they're supposed to issue a new RFP.
That was the plan.
That was the plan, right? Okay. Okay, regarding federal funding, at last month's meeting, I shared what we knew about or anticipated to be the impact of the executive orders coming out of the Trump administration on university research and education dollars. The situation continues to be monitored closely, obviously by President Hensel, the Board of Regents, and the UH Senior Executive Management, which Bonnie is a part of. UH response to all of this is being led at the system level as opposed to at the campus level. So there's a more coordinated response. And that UH is also working very closely with the state in an overall strategy being led by the governor and the attorney general, because these executive orders really have broad impact across the state, many agencies. So it's not, we won't be out there on our own. It's really being strategized and coordinated and led at a state level. The situation at our level remains unclear. I did share with you some of the potential impacts to the CMS budget should UH's, our research funds, CMS's research funds get impacted, as well as how the observatories are impacted. To date, the observatories have not shared or said anything specific about how they are, how they think they're going to be impacted. Right now, things seem to be as proceeding as normal. We, UH or CMS, has been asked to carefully evaluate, obviously, our spending needs, especially for hiring and travel. And we have been directed to make sure we prioritize mission-related programs and operations and activities. So that's what our focus has been over the last several weeks. Nahua and the team have been working on various scenarios, you know, trying to just anticipate what could happen once we know with more certainty. You know, right now it's too early to say exactly what the impact would be, but we're trying to anticipate and prepare for different outcomes. So very fluid, very unclear situation still. But I know Bonnie and the executive team is you know, meeting regularly about this stuff. I don't know if Regents or Bonnie, if you guys want to say anything more. You guys are closer to some of this than I am.
I think your information is more current than mine.
Okay.
I'll find out tomorrow, I mean on Thursday.
Yeah. I think there'll be a communication coming out to principal investigators of various grants by the end of the week, and maybe another campus message about the fiscal part, but I'm not quite sure what the timeline is for that one.
Okay. Okay. So that concludes my executive director's report. Any questions?
Oh, I don't see any questions.
Barbara, do we have a date for our April meeting?
April meeting date.
I think it's first.
April 1st.
Not kidding me.
Anybody have an objection to that?
No. Mid-April, I gotta be away. I just didn't want to miss the meeting.
Okay.
But no, I don't have any objection to April 1st.
Okay.
Thank you.
I would, before we adjourn though, Chair, there are some matters related to the whole transition process that I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session if we could.
Yes,
So
go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to move into executive session to consult with our attorney on questions and issues pertaining to MKMB's powers, duties, privileges, immunities, and liabilities pursuant to HRS 925A4 regarding our authorities and decision-making process in our joint management role with MKSOA.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Andy. We have a motion and a second to move into executive session. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Unanimous. So we will now move to executive session and return to our regular meeting after executive session is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Sure. I was running a little late, which they had.
I've lost my view, if you can still hear me. Yeah, I don't know. I'm certain there's something I did wrong. Let me leave you for a minute and see if I can fix that.
Greg, this is Roberta. I was wondering, because I noticed Julie didn't make it to last month or this month. Is she okay?
I don't know, actually. Let me follow up with her. Sorry, had she responded?
I haven't heard from her, no.
Okay.
Let me see if she responded to the invite. Those go out.
You know, the last time I talked to her, they were in the process of distributing all the money that they're supposed to distribute, and they're supposed to close down their operation.
Oh, for the county, right? County of
Yeah,
Hawaii.
for the county, yeah,
She did not RSVP for this meeting.
okay. So she did not RSVP for this meeting, so I'll follow up with her and check.
Yeah, just see. Or you may just want to update her. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's
I know
always,
she was here the time you couldn't make it, so she did chair that meeting.
right. But she always has good thoughts too.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll just do Dr. Bergen.
You call in to adjourn the meeting.
Well, I don't think you need it necessarily, but.
Yeah, can I just call the regular?
Yeah, I think you can. We have quorum.
So it is now 6:36. I'm calling the Maunakea Management Board meeting back to order. And Greg, if you don't mind summarizing our executive session, thank you.
Sure. So during the executive session, we met with our attorneys to discuss various issues regarding our authorities and decision-making process as it relates to the transition to the new Mauna Kea Stewardship Oversight Authority. No decisions were made, no recommendations were offered, no votes were taken. The discussion was for informational purposes only.
Thank you. Announcements. Our next public meeting will be on Tuesday, April 1st at 5 p.m. Are there any other announcements, Greg or Nahua, you'd like to make?
Nope.
No?
I actually have more of a personal point, a little awkward that Billy's not here, but putting another hat on. Hawaii Public Radio is hosting an episode of The Conversation in Waimea on March 21st in the evening at the Kahilu Theater. And one of the people they will be interviewing from the stage is our very own Dr. Billy Bergen. So.
Great.
That's great.
Is that a Saturday?
Friday.
Friday?
Yeah, Friday night.
Awesome.
I may try to make it out there, but not
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. Thank you for that announcement.
Yeah.
I also hope everybody had a happy Girls' Day yesterday, and thank you for attending the meeting. It is now 6:38, and I will adjourn. Have a great evening, rest of the evening, everybody.